Good evening. My name is and on behalf of the Mackin-Mailander Lecture Committee, I'd like to welcome you to this evening's lecture with Clark alum, Sister Joan Lingen. Thank you so much for joining us. The Mackin-Mailander Lecture Series was established in 1997 after Clark received gifts from Mary Mackin and Verna Slattery Mailander to establish an endowed lecture series. The lecture series throughout the year features prominent outside speakers, faculty, and alums. Now, a few notes about tonight's event. First of all, Joan's talk is entitled Clark Lives, Lives That Make a Difference. And she will speak for about an hour, and then we will open it up for question and answer. We will follow that up with some light refreshments and more conversation in the atrium. The theme for our arts and lecture offerings this academic year is Clark Lives. Almost 40 years ago, in May of 1984, that phrase became famous as a symbol for our school's strength and resilience. That year, 2 days before graduation, fire tore through the campus buildings, destroying 4 buildings. Undaunted students hung the iconic sign, Clark Lives, from the doorway of the Margaret Mann Administrative Building to proclaim to the world that they and their college was not going away. That kind of determination and grit have been hallmarks of Clark since the arrival of the first BBMs in Dubuque in 1843. And that's why members of the Mackin-Mailander Committee decided last year that a good way to honor that legacy was to make Clark Lives our theme for the year. Now, when we set about brainstorming about who might be a good alumni speaker for this special year, our thoughts immediately turned to Sister Joan Lingen. Joan graduated from Clark College in 1961. She went on to teach art history, to chair the art department, and later to serve as vice president for academic affairs, retiring in 2014. But Joan hasn't really retired. She continues to be active in the Dubuque community, working with the Board of Trustees at the Dubuque Museum of Art, teaching at Mount Carmel's Roberta Kuhn Center, and numerous other things, including serving as our alumni lecturer for this evening. So please join me in welcoming Clark alum, Sister Joan Lingen.
Thank you. Did you notice that? 10 years ago when I last stood up here, I didn't need someone to arm. So I do now. And I thought that 10 years ago when I stood here, it was going to be the last time. Well, guess what? It's not. I am an introvert, and I'm not known for public speaking. So some of you are wondering why I said yes to this invitation. Well, I've asked myself that same question multiple times. Maybe if you hang around long enough, you eventually get picked. But I also suggest that Gina Burkhardt is good at convincing one that being selected is a good thing. So, let's see here. Clark is where I learned the value of a liberal arts education. I probably didn't realize it at the time, but here is where my values, first taught by my family, were truly developed. While the BVM core values of education, freedom, charity, and justice had not yet been formally adopted by the college, they were evident everywhere, especially in the BVM sisters who not only served as faculty and staff and administrators, but were also the RAs and the dorm directors. You know, you just can't live so closely with BVMs and not be influenced by them. Clark has been alive in the past, is alive now, and will be alive in the future. It lives in its alumni, its faculty, staff, and students. These are the lives that made and continue to make a difference. This is not the first time Clark used the words or the concept of Clark Lives. In a talk, Helen Thompson, BVM, then academic dean at Clark, gave the Clark faculty this talk in September of 1971. She stressed the need for change in the educational system and methodology, saying, "To make such changes, the school must be free. It must live. Not only must an institution be alive in the present, but it must live for the future." But it is true, the phrase, Clark Lives, really became famous after the fire in 1984. Since then, it has been used in public relations materials, particularly in institutional advancement publications. So it's now been 40 years since that fire, and much has changed. New buildings, new curriculum, new majors, new people. So this evening, I would like to share with you some of the incredible changes in people at Clark before and after the fire of 1984. These are people who kept Clark alive and still do today. So I want you to feel free to smile, to laugh, to frown, to groan as these images strike you. And if nothing else, the students in here, you can say, "I'm glad it wasn't like that now that I'm here." So let's begin at the beginning, 1843. As will be obvious, the early story of Clark is the story of the BVMs, the story of courage, change, and adaptation. Had it not been for the 5 courageous Irish women, headed by Mary Frances Clark, who left their families and all that was familiar to respond to their personal calls to come to America, first to Philadelphia and then to Dubuque to teach the children of miners, farmers, and traders, there would have been no Clark College, nor Clark University. The story of Clark's history begins with the opening of St. Mary's Female Academy in Dubuque in 1843 at 3rd and Bluff Streets. Interestingly, a record of its first students lists a Catherine Dunn. This is she, not she. This Catherine Dunn was the daughter of the first Supreme Court Justice in Wisconsin Territory, and later the wife of the first governor of Wisconsin, Nelson Dewey. I thought this was interesting, just as interesting as the names of students was the list of expenses. Compare them to today, or when you might have been in school. Well, later the school moved to the Prairie, about 8 miles outside of Dubuque, and was renamed St. Joseph's Academy. Not insignificant to our history, the buildings on the Prairie burned to the ground in 1849. But undaunted by this tragedy, St. Joseph's on the Prairie was rebuilt. Sound familiar? In 1859, the school was relocated from the Prairie to 14th Street in the city, as winter weather made the Prairie trip almost impossible for students. It was then renamed Academy of the Sacred Heart. Not the end of moving or renaming. In 1868, the Academy moved again to a mansion at 13th and Main Streets and returned to its former name, St. Joseph's Academy. By now, the school had grown to more than 150 students. But the school moved again, as Bishop Hennessy wanted the land for a seminary. Thank you, Bishop. Seriously. As the need for more space became evident, once again, Mount St. Joseph's Academy moved in 1880, this time to Seminary Hill. This is where, in 1878, Mary Frances Clark purchased 11.5 acres. This is the site Clark University still occupies. Now, she paid $200 an acre. I looked it up. We now have 55 acres, and farmland acres are worth $11,000 today. So think how smart she was. Seminary Street was renamed Clark Drive in 1952. So it was here, on Seminary Hill, that the college was born in 1901, but still referred to as Mount St. Joseph College, a 3-year liberal arts college, the first such college for women in the state of Iowa. This, it's actually a postcard, so I tried to identify the buildings here. All the buildings except for Eliza Kelly Hall were built before the turn of the century. It was renamed Clark College in 1928. Over the years, in decades I should say, several more buildings were constructed at the college. These included Eliza Kelly Hall, Mary Frances Clark Hall, Terence Donahue Hall, Mary Josita Hall, Mary Benedict Hall, Catherine Byrne Hall. After the fire, the center of campus was rebuilt and other structures followed. So you see the Wahlert atrium here with all that it includes, the library, music hall, chapel, gallery, administration offices, and so on. The Kiel Center, the Recreation Sports Complex, and the Student Activity Center, and the Catherine Dunn Apartments, and the Marie Miskey Center for Science Inquiry. Once, this was the main entrance to the college on the left-hand side. This is the front door, I should say, to visitors. This was not the students' entry into campus. So this led into a solarium, a great hall for visitors, and then compare it with our atrium entrance today, which is everyone's entrance, not just visitors. Yes, Sacred Heart Chapel. The picture you're looking at on the right-hand side is an actual view of Sunday liturgy at Sacred Heart Chapel. When I was in school here, and I'm sure for generations before me, the students wore caps and gowns to Mass on Sunday. Wouldn't that go over well now? Now we have a wonderful chapel, brick chapel, still looking like it is a Gothic style, certainly in its interior. Is interesting also, I think, is the library. The 3 slides at the bottom, or images at the bottom, are the then. The now is the upper part, of course. In the center on the bottom is one of the first libraries at the college. This one was in Margaret Mann Hall. The other 2 were in Mary Bertrand Hall and were the library when the fire happened. So this is what we would have used until the new library. So we can say the same thing about science buildings. The circle here circles the old science building, the old Catherine Byrne Hall. So before 1966, sciences were taught in this building on back campus. The building was torn down at the end of 1965. This is the inside of one of the labs. I don't know if there are any science faculty in here, but how would you like to deal with this? So, new build science buildings were built to accommodate changes in major programs and curriculum. Among them, labs for nursing, biology, chemistry, physical therapy, food and nutrition, graphic design, and everything that needed a laboratory. So here are the new laboratories. Early on, Clark had a gym. Now it has an athletic facility. Sports at Clark in the early days consisted mainly of swimming, tennis, archery, and bowling. It appears that bowling was so popular that there was a recreation area in the bowling and a bowling alley in Mary Bertrand Hall. That's the center photo. When Terence Donahue was built, additional bowling lanes were installed. Those are the 2 slides you see next to it. And now, where do we go? We go to Cherry Lanes for our bowling, so we don't have to set up our own pins. Besides the theater and the gym in Terence Donahue Hall, there was a recreational area below with a swimming pool. A November 1936 issue of the Clark Courier had an article called Life-Saving Corps Holds Water Frolic. Besides team races, there were water games and stunts, including diving into the pool to retrieve 100 copper pennies that had been thrown into the pool to start the fun. Not so fun, though. In recent years, the swimming pool area became a weight room. Now, I'm putting a couple of arrows in here, and you can see the tiles on the wall so that the weight room really is where the old swimming pool was. It's just filled in. This was also the time when required physical education classes were initiated at Clark, and Clark joined the National Women's Athletic Association, and intramural games began. Tennis was first introduced to Mount St. Joseph Academy in 1893. Perhaps its popularity stemmed from the fact that it was a sport that could be played with women wearing dresses. Archery may also have appeared for the very same reason. It became a popular sport after the Olympic Games began. Basketball. Women's basketball has changed since its creation in 1891. Basketball for women was seen as a very limited contact sport and was not recognized at the college level except as intramurals. However, due to the Depression in the 1930s, intercollegiate athletics was dropped until 1974, when women's basketball again started. Clark became a member of the Iowa Association of Intercollegiate Athletics for Women, and the team was known as the Clarkies. In 1977, the team name was officially changed to Crusaders through a vote of the student body. Now, I just want to call your attention to one of the images here, the center top. It's a photograph from 1930. One of my classmates sent it to me because her mother was on the basketball team in that picture. And I think she's on YouTube watching this. So, Mary Jane or Mary Lou, here's your mom. Well, nothing could be show more pride and excitement of athletics at Clark today than the women's basketball championship team of 2023. A little collage here of some of the current sports at Clark, but not all of them. The one that existed before it existed was football. Football was played before Clark had a team and a field. The front lawn of Mary Josita Hall frequently was the venue for the game. And note, it's played by women. At one time, there was a barn on campus, rented by a farmer to house his horses. In the 1950s, you might see a student or two riding those horses on the front lawn of Mary Josita Hall. About 4:30 in the afternoon, when the nuns went to prayer. A Clark Courier article in 1937 talks about the newly organized college riding classes. The article was accompanied by this photograph that I've inserted here, and it identified 30 students who were taking lessons. There was no indication of where the horses were stabled, but the lessons in riding were given at a location along a creek at Golden Valley. I have no idea where that is, and I could not find it. I just want you to note the attire. These women are wearing jodhpurs, and pants were forbidden, but you could wear them for sports. But let's go back to the beginning. The first graduating class at Mount St. Joseph's Academy in 1881 numbered 5 or 6 students. The photograph shows 5, but I'm afraid the history says there were 6. And this is Clark's first graduating class. Records show there were 2 students, Esther McElroy and Florence Nyan, but the only one pictured was Esther. So here she is at her graduation. But how about this one? At the 2023 179th commencement, 228 degrees were awarded. Clark's come a long way since its first graduation. Do you know someone at Clark who published 4 cookbooks? The Red Book of Recipes, my sister Mary St. Clair Sullivan, was published in 1945. compiled by Clark College home economics students. The recipes were mostly from local people. Not to be confused, however, with Carl Jung's Red Book. But Sister Mary St. Clair is best known for her Kitchen of Tomorrow, her radio show, originally broadcast from the college music hall, which was about where we are right now. There was a music hall prior to the fire. She conducted the program, the radio show, from 1939 until her retirement in 1969. Her students prepared the food in the show's kitchen. Many of her girls, as she called them, continued their education and professional careers, teaching at universities and serving as dietitians around the world. Sister Mary St. Clair also co-authored a homemaker's column in the Telegraph Herald for about 10 years in the Telegraph Herald. In 1952, McCall's magazine presented her with one of the first Mike Awards for being one of 7 United States women radio executives performing public service to women. Well, we don't have a home economics major at Clark today, but we have a nutrition and food science minor at Clark, which focuses on understanding how food and nutrition contribute to personal health and societal well-being, not learning to be a chef nor a dietitian. Clark University has had a history of caring for its campus by planting trees. This began in 1885, when William Knight, lawyer, who also had 2 daughters at the academy at that time, planted 100 trees. Many of them formed pine walks. Some of you may well remember there was a long one in front of a campus stretching from Mary Josita Hall to Eliza Kelly Hall. In 1906, under the guidance of Mary Bertrand Foley, the tradition of tree planting began when a tree was planted for each graduate. Now, that might have been 5 or 6 trees in 1906. That tradition has continued but changed its focus as each freshman class plants its tree, while the senior class names its tree planted 4 years earlier. Weather permitting, the ceremony is held outdoors. Weather not permitting, indoors. Today, that focus on the environment continues as the campus has been named a Tree Campus USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation and the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. Clark is committed to plant several trees each year. One of the most important groups on campus is the Student Committee on Freshman Orientation, commonly called tuck pointers, as they cement relations between old and new students. From a list of volunteers, a group of students is selected and assigned to incoming freshmen. Their role is to assist new students and families as they transition to life at Clark by engaging them. So here we see the very first group of tuck pointers in 1949, and now we see tuck pointers today. This was this year's. Well, another tradition that has remained at Clark is the Christmas dinner. While the menu may be similar, the attendees look different, don't they? While buildings and academic programs speak to Clark alive and well, it's the faculty, staff, students, and alumni, past and present, who were and continue to be the glue that holds the institution together. I just had to get a plug in here. This is my graduating class down here in this left-hand corner. All right. So, for more than 6 decades, generations of Clark students knew Sister Rachel Eppel, who began her ministry teaching biology and German at Clark in 1907. But I'm guessing that if you remember her, it is as the college postmistress that more likely Sister Mary's post office, a position she lovingly held for 30 years. For an article in Salt magazine in 2018, Norm Freund wrote about this way. She wrote about a story that she told him. Here's a little quote from it. As a woman with a sense of humor, she chuckled in recalling the time that someone insisted on mailing a letter airmail from Clark to Loras College, just a few miles away. Now here's her sense of humor. She had to inform that person that the college had no helicopter. When she retired in 1968, she was honored with the papal medal, Pro Ecclesia Pontificate of Pope Paul VI for Church and Pope, the medal awarded for distinguished service to the Catholic Church. You know, there must be something in the post office that generates longevity. First assigned to Clark College in 1957, Sister Ramona Barwick served as food service coordinator for 13 years, while she assisted in the post office and the bookstore until she became the manager of both. Those of all marvel at the transformation Ramona made when these services moved first to the atrium and then to the Kiel Center. To the normal academic materials, she added an extensive line of Clark attire and gift items, making the bookstore, or the campus store as it's called, a shopping experience. In her funeral eulogy, she's quoted as saying, "I liked selling. I like people. I aimed to make it the best bookstore I could." For this, she earned the title, Sister Mary Bookstore. Whose name is on the computer center at Clark? Y'all know. Sister Mary Kenneth Keller, a trailblazer in higher education. She was the first woman to receive a PhD in computer science. Now, I've heard it said she was the first person. Not true. The first person to receive a degree, a PhD degree, was Irving Tang, who received his diploma from Washington University in St. Louis just hours before she received hers. Hours! June 7th, 1965. Sister Mary Kenneth became an important figure in the early development of computer basic language. She founded the computer science department at Clark, one of the first small colleges to offer such a program. Her legacy is not only to Clark University, but the entire field of computer science. Kenneth recognized the potential of computers in education and founded the Association of Small Computer Users, an organization still active today. But here's the best part. She has her own page in Wikipedia. So, who responded to Cesar Chavez and the United Farm Workers to picket California growers and was arrested and spent 2 weeks in jail in 1973? Of course, Sister Mary Ellen Caldwell. Despite her many assignments and experiences, she will be remembered best for her 25 years in the Religious Studies Department at Clark. However, there were times when the call to serve others less fortunate took her away from campus, such as teaching scripture in Kenya, or at a seminary in Ghana, or ESL in Hungary. No opportunity seemed to have escaped her determination. Her funeral eulogy described her this way. Mary Ellen may have been small in stature, but she had a brilliant mind, a great desire for knowledge, an adventurous spirit, ready to face new challenges, and a listening heart, always sensitive to the hardships, hopes, and desires of others. Mary Ellen's legacy is many-faceted, but always focused on peace and justice. Jeremy T.M. Tam, or simply Therese, came to Clark College as a student in 1946, where she majored in sociology and minored in English. I'm sure she knew every rule in the English language, as she was constantly correcting my grammar. And those of my housemates, and probably some of you also. In 1959, she returned to Clark to teach in the speech and drama department. Then she became Dean of Students, then Director of Planned Giving, Coordinator of Development. She was excellent at raising money. I'm guessing that many of you also had the pleasure of meeting Therese in that way. She also served as Vice President of Institutional Advancement, Assistant to the President, Executive VP, and Director of Development. She moved her office so many times she didn't know where it was. She had a great sense of humor and a quick Irish wit, always looking for a bargain. Those of us who lived with Therese called her the coupon queen. The daily newspaper, and especially the Sunday paper, looked like Swiss cheese after Therese had finished with it. But back to what is important. Therese's life can be summed up in her own words, and I quote, "I encourage students to learn and practice how to love one another, camaraderie, a willingness to give, and knowledge of how and when to lead and how and when to follow are crucial aspects of a student's development. To all development, life is about caring. Isn't this exactly how you remember Sister Mary Lucilda BVM? She was most happy when in the company of her students. Her main ministry at Clark was teaching and serving as chairperson in the Spanish department, which she did for over 40 years. Students loved her for her genuine caring and her willingness to listen, affectionately calling her Lucy. In her later years, she was the director of alumni outreach and a super sleuth at locating lost alums and rekindling friendships with former students. Sister Mary Lucilda was one of those teachers who had a profound effect on her students. Over the years, many alums came back to campus at homecoming just to visit her. For almost 55 years, she touched the lives of many people at Clark, students, faculty, and staff. In the words of others, and I quote, "Her spirit will never die." So whose face has been known by hundreds of Clark students for many years? Mary Ellen Herbst served as the welcome desk reception at Clark University, even before it was a university. While she answers phone calls and greets and directs all visitors who come through the atrium entrance, much of her day is spent assisting students. I say assisting students, as she serves them in multiple capacities: friend, confidant, information giver, and mother. Mother? Yes, mother. Her wisdom has saved many students from making poor choices in life and love. Who else would have spent days during the pandemic on the telephone, calling every student to make sure they were okay when Clark was physically closed? Why would she do that? She said, and I quote, "Clark is a tight-knit community, and the time away is hard on everyone. I was hoping to brighten Clark's students' days even just a little bit." Is it any wonder that she received the Core Values Award in 2014? Vice President for Enrollment Management, Julie Sirks, began her career at Clark while she was an undergraduate student. Julie says, quote, "Ever since I was a student tour guide, I've had a passion for this institution and this work." For almost 20 years, Julie has worked with faculty and staff to secure the success of Clark and to make the enrollment to attendance process seamless for students. Her favorite professional achievement was being given the Rose O'Toole Award in 2019. About this award, she said, "It truly made me feel like my work and passion was reaching across campus." My faith also plays a role in my work as I strive to keep the spirit of Mary Frances Clark alive. She was a powerful motivator and had such a future-focused mentality. I try to share this with my team in our day-to-day work. Clark was home to Sister Carol Blitchen for over 50 years, from her undergraduate days until her official retirement in 2012. Carol came to Clark as a faculty member in 1962 and immediately began her distinguished career as teacher, department chairperson, and director. She was the first recipient of the Minnie Dunham Award for Excellence in Teaching in 1985 and was chosen to receive the Outstanding Alumni Achievement Award in 1996, as well as Kennedy Center Awards. Carol nearly lived in the theater, doing what she loved, directing plays, or teaching and developing students into adults with professional aspirations and careers. After directing over 130 productions, Carol earned her retirement, but her networking with and for her former students has not ceased. Graduates seek her wisdom and inspiration and often return to reminisce on their memories of the theater and drama at Clark. She left a legacy of excellence here. Who doesn't want a professor who dresses like Socrates? Sorry, Norm. Since Norm Freund came to Clark in 1981, there was hardly a committee, a program, or an event that he hasn't served on, narrated, or participated in during his tenure here. Professor Emeritus and BVM Associate, he serves as Clark's campus history tour guide. His history and heritage tour of Clark campus and tree planting are unique aspects of Clark's history. As he says, and I quote, "I am often considered the resident historian about the BVMs, tree planting, and our institutional history. As I researched the Heritage Tour, I was struck by the legacy left by the BVM sisters. It became important for me to do something enduring that would tell the significant story of Clark and the BVMs. Norm was also the founder of Clark's pre-law program and has had Clark graduates placed in graduate law programs across the United States and practicing law today. His former students thank him for his dedicated service, saying, "We are truly fortunate to have learned from you." Norm received the Minnie Dunham Award for Excellence in Teaching in 1988 and the Core Values Award in 2008. Professor of Anatomy, Michelle Slover's classes are known to be tough. That's important as her students are primarily preparing for careers in medicine or related fields. Michelle has very high expectations for her students' performance, but they know she is more than willing to help, saying, and I quote, "She will make it so you truly understand what is going on." Her goal is to improve student learning, so she integrates lab and lecture, as that process gives multiple ways to grasp the material. She says, and I quote, "It's important to me that students leave my courses not only knowing more about the human body, but also having gained the skills necessary to think of a solution to a problem by utilizing that knowledge." In the words of a student, "She has become one of my favorite professors." No wonder she received the Minnie Dunham Award for Excellence in Teaching in 2010. How often have you heard students say that a teacher is inspirational or that his lectures were amazing? Tony Breitbach received a 5 on the Rate My Professor survey. That's awesome, by the way. And he is the most recent faculty to receive the Minnie Dunham Excellence in Teaching Award. Students agree that his classes are hard, but say he cares about their success and encourages them to get help from him to understand the material better. Students say, "Tony's very helpful in and out of the classroom. He never makes you feel uncomfortable asking questions. He's willing to help you in any way he can." They appreciate his knowledge and encouragement, aware that he is a great resource for discussing future career paths or grad school. Students encourage others to take all of the classes taught by him that you can. What a legacy. This is Kelly Clark, but her name is missing the E. In May 2022, Kelly Clark, Dean of Student Engagement, received the Rose O'Toole Staff Recognition Award. According to one of her colleagues, she has clocked more on-campus hours than the greatest scientific minds of our planet can calculate. You will see her generously giving her time to support all activities happening on the Clark campus, especially those that promote student retention and success. She's known to be a great collaborator and is always thinking big picture. She's dedicated to enriching the lives of students and colleagues with whom she comes in contact. She says, and I quote, "I have a passion for helping others, primarily the college-age student who is seeking his or her identity, which is one of the many reasons why I chose to pursue a career in student affairs." Daryl Duitmeyer. He recently retired from Clark University after being employed here for 40 years. Other than BVMs, he may be the longest-serving staff member at the university. Norm may know better than that. He recalls that in 1980, Sister Mary Xavier took a chance on a young 20-year-old with long hair and a 2-year horticultural degree and hired him for maintenance and yard work. But most of us remember him as the college carpenter after Dick Cruzy. He made rooms where none existed. He became quite adept at making something out of almost nothing. His carpentry skills can still be seen in bookcases, picture frames, stands, and lecterns. While Daryl certainly has many memories of his time at Clark, he says the most memorable moment was clear: the fire of 1984. I quote, "I remember the day like it was yesterday. With another staff member, I ran into the fire to help get the nuns out from upstairs in Margaret Mann Hall. But secretly, I think his greatest memory at Clark was meeting Kelly, who was working in the Institutional Advancement Office, She soon became his wife. He received the Core Values Award in 2012. A few Clark presidents, just a few, those that I could get pictures of, save one. Mary Bertrand Foley in the center on the top. No photograph of her in Clark archives, and apparently none in the BVM archives at Mount Carmel. She's one of the pioneers of the Sisters of Charity. Under her direction, Mount St. Joseph's Academy transitioned to Mount St. Joseph's College. Sacred Heart Chapel and the Fine Arts Building were built, and tree planting was initiated. Keonia Kavanaugh, upper left, president during World War I. Under her guidance, the college achieved approval from the North Central Association of Colleges and Secondary Schools. She initiated a war relief committee encouraging wheatless and meatless days, and she began Red Cross courses for preparing surgical supplies and set up war gardens. Sister Mary Gervais Tuffy was president after the war. Under her administration, a Student Cooperative Government Association was formed. Registration grew to include international students. Mary Frances Clark Hall was constructed to house 150 students. Yes, I do have the dates up there so you know what I'm talking about. So in terms of international students, I think that is a real feat. Sister Mary Ambrose Mulholland was president during World War II when Clark celebrated its 100th anniversary. During her time, enrollment grew to 500 students. But she was a faculty member at Clark for 25 years, teaching chemistry and history. She's best remembered for her course in church history, with her famous saying to the students, "Just give me the meat, girls, just the meat." Sister Anne Leon Graham was president after World War II, and under her, the buildings were renamed to reflect those who played vital roles in the college history. And Mary Josita Hall was built to house 220 students. The student honor system was adopted in 1951. Sister Mary Benedict Phelan, the longest tenure as president before Clark. Under her time, an additional floor was added to Mary Josita Hall. Mary Bennett residence and Catherine Byrne Hall were built, named, however, East and West Halls. We joined NCATE. A Master of Arts in Education was initiated. The Computer Science Department started. A Board of Trustees was formed, and the Tri-College Initiative was begun. As Sarah McAlpin in an article in the Catalyst says, Sister Mary Benedict's role was always the good of the entire college. A few others. In 1969, trustees elected Robert Giroux, the first male president of Clark College. He was responsible for fully developing the tri-college cooperative effort with Loris and the U of D. Under him, placement and counseling services began, and the continuing education program was initiated. That's what later became the Time Saver Adult Education Degree Program. Maneve Dunham was formerly a music faculty member at Clark and was an alumna of the college. Under her tenure, a nursing program was initiated. The college became co-ed. The Keller Computer Center opened, and cooperative education program was initiated. Catherine Dunn. She came to Clark in 1973 to teach in the education department. She then became vice president for institutional advancement and president in February 1984. Her response to the fire in May was incredibly positive. She immediately said the college would be rebuilt and set about seeing to that goal. The center of campus became the focal point of Clark with the building of the atrium, the chapel, art and music classrooms, library, and administrative offices. In 1986, the Telegraph Herald presented Catherine Dunn the first Citizen Award, saying, and I quote, "Sister Catherine Dunn became Clark College's president at one of the worst times, but a devastating fire never got her down. Instead, it made her fight harder to make the college greater." Today, she continues her love for Clark as she volunteers her time in the advancement office, reaching out to alums and raising money. Joanne Burroughs, her commitment to student athletes and to the betterment of the college was very strong. This can be seen in the addition of several athletic programs, men's and women's lacrosse, for example, esports, and certainly football. Under her leadership, Clark transitioned from a college to a university, and the Marie Miskey Center for Science Inquiry was built. Tom Chesney, his presidency was a challenge as during his time, the COVID-19 pandemic endangered the delivery of academic programs. He assisted the university to navigate the pandemic, to increase enrollments, and to strengthen relationships with the Dubuque community, especially with the community colleges. But what about Fletcher Lamkin? His extensive experience now in higher education as a professor, a dean of academics, VP, and a president make him extremely qualified to guide and direct the university at this time. As interim president, he has guided committees to develop a new vision and mission statement, strategic plan, and to survive the North Central visitation. Did it? Good. All right. Since 1935, the Francis J. O'Connor Award has been recognized as the most prestigious honor given to a Clark University graduating senior who displays scholarship, leadership, cooperation, generosity and service, and loyalty to Clark. In 1983, the award was given to Carol Schmidt-Truig. Since then, Carol has focused her efforts on serving humanity, primarily as an educator, originally as a high school teacher and coach, then as a principal and a superintendent, and currently as a financial advisor. In all of these positions, she focused on the well-being of others, and she credits the impetus of winning the Francis J. O'Connor Award as engendering in her a responsibility to work very hard to make a difference in the communities in which she lived and worked. Her advice to Clark students is, do everything. That means get involved beyond the classroom, participate in and hold leadership positions, go to as many co-curricular activities as you can. I think Clark is alive in Carol. The most recent winner of the O'Connor Award is Gianna Michaels, biology major and graduate of the class of 2023. Gianna believes in active community service, and for 4 years participated in Into the Streets, volunteering her time and talent, connecting with the needs of Dubuque residents. She also participated in Clark Inclusive Games, bringing together Dubuque community members who have disabilities and Clark students to participate in intramural games. In addition, she found time to be on the Clark Pride women's basketball team, earning student athlete honors in the Heart of America Athletic Conference. Actually, I think I saw something in the paper today about her. Gianna says her college experience was amazing. And I quote, "It's pretty easy to be yourself. Stay involved and build relationships when Clark feels like home. The memories created during my entire Clark experience are some I will never forget." She plans to pursue medical school and would like to practice in the Dubuque area. Luke Flynn, a music composition major at Clark and recipient of the Francis J. O'Connor Award in 2013. Besides being a music student, he served as an officer of the Clark Student Association and spent a semester studying at the International University of Kagoshima in Japan. A Dubuque native, today Flynn is a composer, arranger, and conductor of film, television, and concert music. His list of awards and honors is lengthy, and his numerous compositions have been performed around the world. Most exciting is his work for film and television, where he's been a music preparer for some of the biggest motion pictures, particularly the Star Wars series. He credits much of his success to his time at Clark, saying, "A lot of people took me under their wing. I was given a lot of guidance, a lot of great mentorship, a lot of pointing in the right direction." Today, he looks forward to assisting others in their quest for success. In 2011, Jeannie Powers Kwan received the Clark University Distinguished Alumni Humanitarian Service Award. Her life has been of service to others. How, you ask? Well, let me count the ways. Do you know someone isolated, confined to home? What about a fundraising campaign or an organization that needs volunteers? Then be like the rest of Dubuque and call on Jeannie Powers Kwan. Many are aware of her efforts to make the world a better place, for which she received the first Citizen Award in 2010. No need was ever too big or too small for her, be it homeroom mother or president of the PTA. As if staying at home with 5 children wasn't enough work, she took on archdiocesan challenges, such as fundraising for Wahlert High School. She even managed the gift shop at Mercy Medical Center and at New Mallory Abbey for almost a decade. Jeannie says that she first learned the importance of giving from her parents. This virtue was further developed during her years of Catholic school education. Today, Jeannie continues to practice the core values of Clark University, helping to keep the institution alive. Beth Otting received the Humanitarian Service Award posthumously. Beth died in January 2016 at the age of 51 as a result of trying to save the life of another. Beth was like that. She lived to serve others. After spending a few years teaching, she felt the call to provide services for those in need and spent 7 years as a project director for Habitat for Humanity in Ghana and Uganda. But this wasn't enough. Beth found her real calling as a lay missionary in Moravia, Liberia. Yet her time with the Society of African Missions was short-lived. While attempting to save a drowning man, she gave the ultimate sacrifice of her life. In accepting the award for Beth, her sister Kathy spoke of Beth's total awareness that her life belonged to God. She knew instinctively that her life was meant for service. Kathy spoke of the message conveyed by Beth's actions and how it completely captured the spirit of her life, even citing miracles surrounding her death. Beth lived as she died, in service to others. Joshua Withington was the recipient of the Distinguished Alumni Rising Star Award in 2016. Since enlisting in the Army, Joshua's life has been one of active service to our country, first as a lieutenant, then a captain, now a major. In 2007, Joshua was commissioned as an Air Defense Artillery officer and as an operations platoon leader and executive officer. He was deployed to Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and to Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. He was the operations chief, coordinating missions and medical evacuations. He was selected to command the 12th Missile Defense Battery of the United States Army Space and Missile Defense Command in Qatar, and to work at NATO headquarters, where he oversaw teams in support of NATO peacetime missions. Now he's at the Pentagon. He credits Clark with providing him with, and I quote, a foundation in leadership, empathy, critical thinking, creativity, and communication skills essential to any Army officer, adding, I have truly tried to live the Clark core values and hold true to the many shaping experiences I had at Clark College. I apply the core values in every decision I make in support of the mission, the people, and our great country. Clark is alive in Joshua. You know the old proverb, don't let grass grow under your feet. Mary Heidkamp didn't and doesn't. Today, she is president and founder of Dynamic Insights International, counseling and coaching, focusing on serving nonprofit and faith-based organizations. In that role, she works with leaders and board members to engage in strategic planning to build human and financial resources. Prior to this, Mary spent much of her professional career directing archdiocesan social justice offices in Providence, Rhode Island, Rochester, New York, and Chicago, Illinois. For 10 years, she directed the Chicago Campaign for Human Development, while also creating outreach and educational initiatives around social issues and policies affecting quality of life. Mary's personal and professional career has been selfless, a trait she initially learned from her family experiences and having spent her high school years in Johannesburg, Africa. It's obvious that prior to her time at Clark College, she was already practicing the core values of charity and justice. Mary continues to mentor young adults, enabling them to do the best they can with what they have from where they are, reminding them constantly that excellence is a choice, and no matter what your job, do it the very best you can. Siblings Deborah and Charlotte Ashton both received Clark Distinguished Alumni Awards for Outstanding Achievement. Both earned PhD degrees and have received numerous awards in their professional lives. Deborah was named one of the top influential women in corporate America by Savoy magazine in 2014. She says she was influenced by two women and credits them with her success: Harriet Tubman and Sister Catherine Leonard BVM, chair of the psychology department when Deborah was a student at Clark. She says, "I learned the importance of fighting for all to be treated with respect and human dignity from her." A licensed psychologist, Deborah specializes in organizational and clinical psychology, developing ways to ensure inclusive workplaces. Charlotte credits several BVM faculty members for her academic and personal success also. In her acceptance speech this year for the Alumni Award, she said, I quote, "I was taught and nourished by a group of women whom I respect and admire to this day." She calls them women warriors, and noted they were not afraid to be trailblazers and pioneers. She spent much of her professional life as a university professor, teaching history and film, and as a radio critic, affiliated with National Public Radio in Baltimore and elsewhere. Today, she's writing a novel and volunteers as a mentor and counselor to young people in Chicago. She acknowledges the many people at Clark who, I quote, "taught us to think, to exercise our free will, and to embark on an intellectual journey. BVM values were instilled in me when I was young. I carry them in my heart and soul to this day." Well, just how many awards can one person receive? Ann O'Hara Mikhalski received at least 10. The Clark Humanitarian Award was presented to Ann in 2004. After serving some years as a social worker and teacher in Chicago, she moved back to Dubuque, where she spent her life actively working for the Housing Commission, Dubuque Main Street Initiatives, and the Dubuque City Council. But the love of her life was working at the Gannon Center for Mental Health. Wife, mother, teacher, social worker, city council member, and community activist. These are just a few of the roles she so ably carried out. As a catalyst for change, Ann is a good role model for all of us. She left a legacy of advocacy for human rights. Although she passed away in 2014, her name continues to resound throughout this area. Well, how about some students? Echo DeVries said her classes and research experience prepared her for the rigor of graduate-level chemistry classes. Participating in many activities, academic and athletic, taught her a work-life balance that helped her stay grounded to keep her priorities straight. Among the many lessons she learned at Clark that made an impact on her life are: your future does not solely rely on a college degree. If you want to achieve your life goals and dreams, other skills and traits, such as the ability to adapt and to communicate, are necessary as well. And secondly, if you do something the first time and do not succeed, it doesn't mean that you don't know the information. It means that you need to look at it from a different point of view and try again. She says, "I'm very grateful that I came from a university where the professors push you to accept challenges instead of backing down from them." She's now at Iowa State University, working on a PhD in chemistry. Nicole says she's found who she really is at college, and most importantly, through the people around her, she learned what it means to be her true self and discovered what it means to be truly happy around people who are genuinely excited to be where they are. With enthusiasm, Nicole McDermott says, "I loved my time here at Clark. Everything happens for a reason, and I'm discovering that reason here." Being a successful student athlete enabled her to learn skills as communication, time management, organization, and relationship building. She hopes to eventually master these skills and become a positive role model for other students to look for guidance and trust. Anthony King, who really goes by the name of King. For King, being at Clark meant being active and engaged. He says, "I signed up for everything. Psychology club, culinary club, Dungeons and Dragons. I became a tour guide in the admissions office. In addition, he was on the football team, a resident assistant, a BVM prayer partner, and president of the Black Student Union." Of his Clark experience, he says he was forced to grow up and to let go of bad habits. While he takes time off before going to graduate school, he says his focus remains the same. I quote, "I wake up determined to make this day better than the last and to be a blessing to those around me." I wish I woke up every day saying that myself. Today, he's employed at Clark as coordinator of campus activities and leadership. Jenna Schwartzhoff said she wanted a college experience where she could have personal, one-on-one time with her professors. While touring the Clark campus, she had a "this is it" moment, knowing that this is where she was meant to be. She knew she had cheerleaders everywhere, from the education department and the softball team to the admissions office and to Mary Ellen at the front desk. Everyone was in her corner. Even while working on a graduate degree far from Iowa, she knew she still had support from the Clark community, saying, "I think about the friends I've made, all the time I spent in the Gans practice facility, late nights in the SAC after cheering on the basketball team, taking part in the Clark Inclusive Games, and knowing I was part of something special. I encourage others to feel the same." Today, she's an assistant coach and recruiting coordinator at Benedictine College. I think that's one of our rivals. Anthony Gonzalez, better known as Gonzo, from San Diego, says college challenged him with issues such as peer pressure, time management, financial stability, culture shock, and homesickness. But he adjusted to Clark, meeting many amazing new people, and became more confident and aware of his own struggles, motivating him to want to become a helpful guide and a role model for others. Clark prepared him for his future, providing many opportunities to improve the skills needed for his future profession. Clark allowed him to mature and to develop into the young man he is now. His ultimate dream and lifetime goal is to become a plastic surgeon. He has the right attitude. I quote him, "You should always leave a place better than you found it." Beatrice Atienza, raised in the Philippines in her early years, one of her major goals is to bring better health care to the islands, to bring a medical team to impoverished towns, to educate citizens about health care and provide vaccines and medicines. As a nursing major at Clark, she says she knows she can get the skills she needs for that dream from the professors here. She also credits her learning to those around her. She is an RA and a member of the Clark Activities Board, and recognizes her ability to help what the next years at Clark will be like for others. She's also a very proud member of the women's basketball team, and she says, as you might guess, among her goals is to make another run for the championship. One Saturday each year, Clark students gather to give a day of service to Dubuque. This year, this Saturday to be exact, there are over 150 students who have registered to participate. They will go out into the streets to mostly nonprofit organizations. Is this not Clark Alive? Oh, one last here and then, now and then. I couldn't help this one. Why would an aerial photograph over here on the left-hand side of the Clark campus from the 1960s not show any parking lots? Well, this overhead view of Clark today has multiple parking lots. All those arrows point to parking lots. Well, you guessed it. We couldn't have cars. Students did not have cars, at least when I was in school here. This is how they got around, by foot, by bus, maybe boyfriends, and bicycles. How more can Clark be alive than with the 280 new students who registered at Clark for fall 2023? One last tradition. This is a common sight on campus, not just at homecoming, but any day, anytime. To say that people are most important in any place is a countercultural idea, often discussed but not often observed. But this is probably the loudest echo, the most powerful refrain in this history. People weave Clark's past and future. You'll find that at the end of the Clark Lives book, which I have a copy of up here, if anyone would like to see it. But I think it clearly represents the Clark we know. The strength of Clark University is rooted in its connectedness to the world around us. It is through this bond that the true impact of Clark comes to life. And just one last look at a brochure. Clark lives in you, around you, and because of you. I thank you for your undivided attention. These are my many resources. There are just so many people I could name. It would fill up way too many slides in this presentation. But thank you to all of those, and thank you to you.
We do have microphones.
Joan, you and I know each other slightly. I'm curious as to what the response was among the women's students when it was announced.
Keep going, Steve.
Okay. I want to know what the response was by the women's students who were at Clark when it was announced that the school was going co-ed. I know that in some other schools where that's taken place, there's been a reaction against it among students, current students, and alumni.
He's wondering, what was the reaction of the women students on campus when it was announced that Clark was going co-ed?
50-50. I don't want to be here.
Joan, use the mic. Use the mic.
What was the reaction to the women when it was announced Clark was going co-ed? I said 50-50. 50 who said yippee, and 50 who said I don't want to be here. But you know what? The reaction was probably strongest with alums, not just the current student body.
Joan, if I were to ask you from your time here as a student, who were the 2 or 3 people who most inspired you, who would you name and why?
Would I name one? Sister Mary Lucilda O'Connor. Well, I could name many. Many that were not even in the presentation. Sister McHale Geary. Sister Mary James Ann. Enough. Your patience was astounding. Thank you.
Before you take off, remember that there are some refreshments out in the atrium. And also, the bookstore was very kind as to provide us with some free copies of Clark Lives. And so there are some out there. You may take a copy. It is yours to keep. And so, please, thank you so much for coming.